This is the 79th organ in the human body. Are you shocked? If you have a cell phone handy, please pull it out and hold it in your hands. If you have a smartphone, you realize that this organ actually responds and behaves like the human body. You touch it, it responds. You speak to it, it can understand you. And sometimes it even talks back to you. And it has an eye. You can hold it up and it recognizes objects around for you. It clearly has a brain because I know my smartphone does things much better than I can do. It's much smarter than I am. And it must have a heart and feelings. Otherwise, why would we walk around with this so close to our heart and sleep with it right next to us? You can put your phones by, but make sure it's close to your heart. And silence it while you do it so you find silence in your heart. But this is a tiny example of the kind of social innovation that is happening in our society through social media. And let me explain this. I came to this realization a few weeks ago in a small village in India called Chitlanjeri. I realized that there are 7 billion people on this planet, and there are 6 billion cell phone connections. So that gets us to an inflection point that humanity has never seen before. You see, Chitlanjeri is this village where my roots go back to. It's a rice farming village where my grandparents grew up as poor rice farmers, and this is where my parents grew up as well, had a modest upbringing without electricity or running water. And when I was a kid, I would go back to Chitlanjeri and spend summers with my grandparents. And back then in the village, of 20,000 people, there were just 3 telephones with 2-digit numbers. Can you imagine that? 2-digit numbers and the fight for vanity numbers there? I considered myself a child prodigy back then because I carry the entire phone book in my head. I still do. 31, 32, and 33. 6 weeks ago, I was back in Chitlanjeri meeting family and relatives there, and I was just walking down the paddies. I realized that most of the village seemed to carry a cell phone in their hand. And it struck me suddenly then that anybody in that village now had the capability where they could punch in 15 numbers into their phone and be instantly connected to one of you in this room right here. You have this amazing capability where, using this magical organ that is sprouted at the end of our fingers, each of us can punch in 15 numbers and carry on a conversation with any one of 6 billion human beings on this planet. This is unprecedented in human history. And so all of a sudden you see that geography and location are not barriers. Whether you live in a dense urban area or a small rural community, those are not barriers. Even language is not a barrier. Supposing one of you does not speak English, you only spoke 52 other languages that I don't speak, like Russian or Czech or Spanish. I could use this smartphone and have a back and forth conversation with you. This is the power that we are packing in this little device in our hand, and we're all living examples of enormous amount of social innovation through social media. The interesting thing is when you put this level of connectivity and communication capability between human beings, something magical happens. Human beings are now ready to share our collective wisdom and knowledge with the rest of the world. And in an era, in an age where knowledge is one of the most important resources we need, this kind of social sharing of our collective wisdom is leveling the playing field for humanity. Let me illustrate that with a small story. So from the rice paddies of Chitlanjeri in India, let's go to the small village, a potato farm in Soy, Kenya, and listen to the story of Zach Mater.
बड़ी Not long ago, I planted a crop of potatoes. Then suddenly they started dying one after the other. Checked out the books and they didn't tell me much. So I went and I did the search. Potato diseases. One of the websites told me that ants could be the problem. It said sprinkle wood ash over the plants. Then after a few days, the ants disappeared. I got excited about the internet. I have this friend, he really would like to expand his business. So we went with him to the cyber cafe and we checked out several sites. When I met him next, he was going to put a windmill at a local school. I felt proud because something that wasn't there before was suddenly there. I realized that not everybody can be able to access what I was able to access. I thought that I need to have an internet that my grandmother can use. And so I thought about a notice board, a simple wooden notice board. When I get information on my phone, I'm able to post the information on the notice board. So it's basically like a computer. I use the internet to help people. I think I'm searching for a better life for me and my neighbors. So many people have access to information, but there's no follow-up to that. I think a follow-up to that is our knowledge. When people have the knowledge, they can find solutions without having to be helped out. Information is powerful, but it is how we use it that will define us.
So Zach Metter says, when people have knowledge, they find solutions to their problems. And this is an example of social media driving powerful social change in a tiny community in Kenya. So from Soy, Kenya, follow me on this journey to North Africa. Until last year, if you just take 3 countries, Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya, between these 3 countries had witnessed 100 years of dictatorship. And then suddenly last spring, in 100 days, the youth of the Arab world had completely overthrown the governments and redefined the social structures of those countries. How did they do it? How would you do it if you don't have an army, if you don't have financial resources, and you don't have an organization? They use the power of social media to express their discontent and organize themselves. In fact, I want to share you one story from Egypt. 3 unknown musicians, Hani El Ader, Amer Idharavi, and Sharif Mustafa, decided to record a protest song called Sout El Hooray. They then took the song to the streets of Cairo and asked ordinary Egyptians to sing the song. And they took the resultant music video and put it up on YouTube so the rest of the world could see. So let's watch a few minutes of this video.
رفعنا راسنا في السماء والجوع ما بقاش بيهمنا أهم حاجة حقنا ونكتب تاريخنا بدمنا لو كنت واحد مننا بلاش ترغي وتقول لنا نمشي ونسيب حلمنا وبطل تقول كلمة أنا في كل شارع في بلادي صوت الحرية بينادي في كل شارع في بلادي صوت الحرية بينادي.
This song was recorded during the 18 days of the Egyptian protests. It was uploaded to YouTube, and by now this video has been watched 2 million times. This became the rallying anthem of the people's protests in Egypt. Another example of how social media is driving powerful social innovation and change in our times. And it's accessible to ordinary people. So from North Africa, let me take you on a journey to South Africa and to Dharamsala in India. The product that I work on at Google is Googleplex, a social media product. One of its capabilities is that it allows friends and family to converse with each other face-to-face using video as a format. So last September, I wrote an intention on a piece of paper. And the intention was, I wanted His Holiness the Dalai Lama to join Google Plus and have a conversation, a dialogue on peace and compassion with Archbishop Desmond Tutu sitting in South Africa, and allow the rest of the world to participate in this dialogue. Now, when you write these kind of crazy intentions down, somehow the universe mystically aligns. Because 4 days after that, my phone rang at 1 a.m. in the morning. The caller was someone called Jonathan Radinoff, somebody I'd never met before. He works for Google in Johannesburg. And this is what he said. Gopi, I'm so sorry to call you at 1 a.m. in the morning, but I have this urgent request. We just had a call from the Desmond Tutu Peace Center. The Desmond Tutu Peace Center is organizing Bishop Tutu's 80th birthday, and the Dalai Lama has been invited to speak and give a lecture on peace and compassion. Unfortunately, the local government has not responded to his request for a visa to travel to the country, and the Desmond Tutu Peace Center called us and asked if we have some technology by which we could solve this problem. So I asked him why did he pick me? And this was his response. He said, I searched through the internal directory, I came across your photograph, and my intuition told me I need to call you. And he also asked him, how long do we have to organize this event and to even see if this is feasible? And he said, 3 days. 3 days. To which I responded, well, Jonathan, let's see. Around here, the impossible we do in a day or two. The miracles take a little longer, like 3 days. So leave it with me. So went back into office the next day, sat down with Lauren Gross, my product manager for Google Plus Hangouts, and asked him, is this even possible? Can we pull this off? And nothing motivates our team than being the champions for democracy and free expression. So we decided we'll go for it. 60 hours after that meeting took place, just 60 hours after that meeting, the Dalai Lama stepped in front of, he got a Google Plus account, and he stepped in front of a computer in Dharamsala, India, half the world away. Archbishop Desmond Tutu stepped in front of a computer at the University of Cape Coast in Cape Town, and this is what the world witnessed.
I really very much enjoy, you see, although physically long distance, but I can see your face.
I just wanted to find out from you, why does the Chinese government fear you?
Some Chinese officials describe me as a demon. I immediately respond, yes, I have a phone.
How do we learn how to build a culture of peace?
It's actually very straightforward. Let women take over.
Your Holiness, I would like to ask you one more thing. If you were going to give a gift from your heart to your very special 80-year-old friend here,
Please live long. Your 90th birthday, I'm looking forward. At that time, don't forget, send me invitation. Then we can test your government.
As you can see, we broke through borders and geopolitics to make this happen. And this medium, the power of this medium, is that allows two world leaders, Nobel Peace Laureates, to come together like two old friends and be able to banter and allow the rest of the world to participate. There was something very significant in my mind about this particular conversation. The first 12 Dalai Lamas had never traveled outside the landlocked country of Tibet. The 13th Dalai Lama traveled just once to New Delhi for a few days. And here was the 14th Dalai Lama, bringing his humor and his message of peace and compassion and loving ordinary citizens like us to participate in this dialogue from our living room, from our home office, from our offices. This is an example of the power of how social media is driving social innovation in world affairs. So from South Africa, follow me on this journey where I want you to take you next to Kentucky in the US. I often tell people working on my team or my mentees to find meaning and context in the work. Because if you find meaning and context, you show up for work every day completely passionate about what you're doing. And I want to end with a story that gives me great meaning and context in the work I do, in the products that I build. Last year, there was an unfortunate shooting incident in Kentucky. A little child was involved in the shooting incident and urgently needed hip and spinal surgery, without which this child would be faced with permanent paralysis below the neck. Now, this town only had a general surgeon in the hospital, and he knew time was of the essence, and he didn't have the expertise to perform the surgery. So he consulted a well-known orthopedic surgeon in Chicago. Now, the Chicago surgeon had heard that there was this new social media product called Googleplex that allowed people to see each other and communicate using video as a format. So he tapped two other orthopedic surgeons, had a computer wheeled into the operating theater in Kentucky, and together the four of them consulted on the surgical procedure. They guided the general surgeon. So you can imagine the scene, 4 surgeons, 4 locations, using social media as a vehicle, with one of the surgeons right in the midst of the action in the operating theater. And they were able to conduct a very successful hip and spinal surgery. Today, as a result, that child, instead of being faced with a life of paralysis, now walks. And this is another example of the power of social innovation through social media in a very, very human situation. And when you realize that the product that you're working on saved somebody's life, that is a source of tremendous meaning and context in my own life. In closing, what I want to tell you is this. Each of us in this room has an enormous amount of power through the social networks we are connected to, and through things like these amazing organs that we seem to be sprouting at the end of our fingertips that puts so much power in our hands. The question I want to ask you is this. In your lifetime, what kind of social innovation will you choose to drive using this power in your hands? And I look forward to reading about it, of course, on Google+. Thank you. Namaste.